Observer Quietl had been watching Earth for 73 years. That was a long time for most species, but for the Harmonious Collective, it was barely a moment. Quietl would live for another 800 years if fortune smiled upon them. They had watched 42 other species before humanity, and every single one had followed the pattern. First came the Atomic Age, when a species learned to split the atom and usually destroyed themselves a little in the process. Then came the Space Age, when they reached their nearest moon or planets. Finally came the Crisis Age, when they realized they were alone in a vast and empty universe. That was when the Galactic Council made contact. That was when new species learned they were not alone, that there was an order to the galaxy, and that they had a place in it. The Council had perfected this process over 847,000 cycles. 2,341 species had joined, each one grateful for guidance, each one willing to accept their role in the great galactic community. The Council brought peace. The Council brought prosperity. The Council brought an end to the chaos that young species always created. Quietl stood in their observation chamber, all four of their eyes fixed on the blue planet below. Earth. Such a strange name for a world that was mostly water. Humans had strange names for many things. That should have been Quietl first warning. The Atomic Age had come to humanity in 1945. They had used it to destroy 2 of their own cities. Most species stopped there, horrified by what they had created. Humans built more weapons. Bigger weapons. Thousands of them. They pointed these weapons at each other for decades, somehow never using them. Dancing on the edge of extinction like it was a game. The Space Age began in 1961. They reached their moon in 1969. Then they stopped going, which made sense to Quietl. The moon was barren and useless. But humans didn't stop because it was barren. They stopped because they lost interest. They got bored of their greatest achievement in 40 years. What kind of species got bored of touching another world? By 2100, they had established colonies on their 4th planet, the red one they called Mars. By 2150, they had stations around the gas giant Jupiter and mining operations in the asteroid belt between. By 2180, they had launched their first faster-than-light probe. It was crude, barely functional, and it nearly destroyed itself on its first jump. But it worked. That was when Quietl sent the report to the Council. Humanity was ready for contact. The Crisis Age had surely come. They had touched the stars and found them empty. They would be desperate for guidance, for proof that they were not alone in an uncaring universe. The Council debated for 3 years. Some wanted to wait longer. Others worried that humanity was advancing too quickly, that they needed guidance before they became dangerous. In the end, the Council did what it always did. They prepared the first contact fleet, 17 ships of elegant design, each one a work of art that proved the superiority of Council technology. They would arrive in peace, offer humanity a place among the stars, and expect gratitude. Quietl accompanied the fleet. They had studied humanity longer than anyone. They knew the languages, the cultures, the complex web of nations and tribes that humans divided themselves into. Quietl had written the contact protocols, chosen the words that would inspire awe without causing fear, selected the gifts that would prove the Council's benevolence. The fleet arrived on March 15, 2187. They broadcast on all frequencies in 70 human languages simultaneously. They waited in orbit for 3 days while humanity organized itself. The humans were chaotic about it, as expected. Every nation wanted to be part of the delegation. Every language group demanded representation. Every religion sent observers. Somehow, impossibly, they managed to agree on a single team of negotiators in less than a week. Ambassador Chen Wei led the human delegation. She was old for a human, nearly 70, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She came aboard the Council flagship with a team of 17, one for each Council ship. Quietl thought that was a nice touch. Perhaps humans understood symbolism after all. The Council chambers have been prepared according to protocol. Soft lighting, comfortable seating adjusted for human physiology, refreshments appropriate to their biology. High Counselor Wrath of the Eternal Dominion presided, their crystalline form glowing gently to put the humans at ease. Around the chamber sat representatives of 40 Council species, each one radiating peaceful intention. Wrath began the speech that had been perfected over hundreds of thousands of years. They spoke of the great family of galactic civilization. They described the benefits of membership, the technologies that would be shared, the protection that would be offered. They explained that humanity had reached a crucial point in their development, that without guidance they might destroy themselves or worse, become a danger to others. The Council had seen it happen before. The Council was here to help. They spoke for 2 hours. Ambassador Chen listened politely, her team taking notes, asking clarifying questions, nodding at appropriate moments. When Wrath finished, they asked if humanity needed time to consider the offer. Every species asked for time, usually days, sometimes weeks. The Council was patient. Ambassador Chen stood. She thanked the Council for their generosity. She acknowledged the wisdom of their civilization. She expressed humanity's gratitude for this contact, for the proof that life existed beyond Earth. Then she said, "We decline." The chamber fell silent. Quietl translator implant must have malfunctioned. Surely she had not said what Quietl thought she said. Wrath's glow flickered, the first sign of confusion Quietl had ever seen from the ancient being. Perhaps we have not explained clearly. This is an offer of membership, of guidance. We are offering to help your species avoid the mistakes that others have made. We understand, Chun said calmly, and we appreciate the offer. But humanity will find its own path. If the Council wishes to engage with us, we will do so as equals. We will trade, share knowledge, and coexist peacefully. But we will not accept guidance. We will not accept protection we did not ask for. We will not accept a place that others have decided we should fill. You do not understand what you are refusing, Wrath said, their glow now pulsing with something that might have been anger. The galaxy is dangerous. Species that refuse the Council's wisdom inevitably fail. Then we will fail on our own terms, Chun replied. Humanity has been failing for thousands of years. We are very good at it. And every time we fail, we get back up and try something new. The Council tried for 3 more days. They offered technology, resources, guarantees of safety. They warned of the dangers that lurked in the dark between stars. They explained that every species eventually accepted the wisdom of joining. Chun and her delegation listened politely, thanked them for their concern, and refused every offer. On the 4th day, the Council withdrew. As their ships prepared to depart, High Counselor Wrath sent a final message. The silence protocol is now in effect. Humanity will be quarantined from galactic civilization until you understand the necessity of proper order. No species may trade with you. No species may share technology with you. No species may offer you aid. When you are ready to accept our guidance, we will return. Quietl watched Chun receive this message. They expected anger or fear or desperation. Instead, Chun smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone accepting a challenge. Tell the Council we said, thank you, Chun said. You have just given humanity exactly what we needed. Quietl did not understand. They would not understand for many years. By then, it would be far too late. 50 years passed before Quietl returned to Earth's sector. The silence protocol should have worked by now. It always worked. Cut off from galactic trade, denied access to advanced technology, isolated from the community of civilized worlds, Stubborn species always came around, usually within 20 years, 30 at most. 50 years was unheard of. The Council had received no communication from humanity, no requests for negotiation, no pleas for aid, no desperate offers to accept guidance, just silence. Quietl assumed this meant humanity had collapsed, fallen back into primitive tribalism, or perhaps destroyed themselves in some war over dwindling resources. It happened sometimes. Not often, but sometimes a species simply could not survive without the Council's help. Quietl ship dropped out of faster than light, travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. They immediately knew something was wrong. The system was not empty. It was crowded. There were supposed to be colonies on Mars and some stations around Jupiter. Quietl records show perhaps 10,000 humans living off-world when the Silence Protocol began. Now, there were structures everywhere. Massive stations orbited Earth, each one larger than anything humans should have been able to build. The asteroid belt was lit up with mining operations, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Mars glowed with lights on its dark side, cities spreading across the red surface. But that was not the strangest part. The strangest part was what lay beyond. Quietl sensors picked up human signals coming from outside the solar system. Not from one star, not from 2 stars, from 17 different star systems, all within 20 light years of Earth. 17 colonies. Impossible colonies. Quietl checked the data 3 times. Then they checked it 7 more times. Then they contacted the Council and requested verification that their sensors were functioning correctly. The Council confirmed the sensors were fine and asked Quietl to explain what they were seeing. Quietl could not explain it. So they went to look. The nearest colony was a planet orbiting a red dwarf star that humans had named Proxima Centauri. The Council had surveyed this world 8,000 years ago and marked it as uninhabitable. The atmosphere was toxic. The radiation from the star would kill most species in days. The temperature swung between burning and freezing. No sane species would try to live there. There were 3 million humans living there. Quietl ship entered orbit and began scanning. The humans had not terraformed the planet. That would have taken centuries and technology they did not possess. Instead, they had changed themselves. The humans on this world were not quite the same as the humans on Earth anymore. They were taller, their skin darker to protect against radiation, their lungs adapted to process the toxic atmosphere. They had engineered their own biology to match the planet instead of changing the planet to match them. It was brilliant. It was horrifying. It was the most reckless thing Quietl had ever seen a species do to itself, but it worked. The cities were thriving. Farms covered the habitable zones. Children played in parks under a dim red sun that should have killed them. Quietl watched a family having a picnic on a hillside, breathing poison, absorbing radiation, completely unaware that they were living in conditions that would be considered a death sentence by any Council species. Quietl moved on to the next colony, and the next. Each world was different. Each world was supposedly uninhabitable. And each world was full of humans who had simply adapted themselves to survive. There was a high gravity world where humans had engineered themselves to be shorter and denser. Their bones reinforced, their hearts stronger. There was a low-gravity world where humans had become tall and thin, able to leap incredible distances. There was a world with barely any light, where humans had developed eyes that could see in almost complete darkness. There was a world of endless storms where humans had built cities that floated in the clouds. 17 varieties of human, Quietl noted in their report. All still calling themselves human. All still claiming to be one species, despite looking different, breathing different atmospheres, eating different foods. They visited each other's worlds wearing environment suits and called it tourism. But the colonies were not the most disturbing thing Quietl discovered. The most disturbing thing was the military. The Council's intelligence had assumed humanity would maintain a small defensive fleet, perhaps a few hundred ships to patrol their own solar system. That was what species did when they were isolated and afraid. Humanity had built something else entirely. Quietl sensors counted over 50,000 military vessels. Not simple patrol craft. Warships. Real warships, designed for combat in a way that Council vessels simply were not. Council ships were elegant, built for show and ceremony. Human ships were ugly and functional. Covered in weapons armored like fortresses, painted in colors that absorbed sensor radiation to make them harder to detect. Quietl managed to get close enough to one human patrol group to analyze their capabilities. What they found made them immediately retreat and file an emergency report to the Council. Human weapons were wrong. That was the only word for it. The Council had rules about warfare. War was supposed to be civilized, a contest of strategy and skill with minimal casualties. You showed force, established dominance, and the loser yielded. It had worked this way for hundreds of thousands of years. Humans did not build weapons for civilized war. They built weapons for total war. Quietl sensors detected kinetic kill vehicles, simple chunks of metal accelerated to near-light speed. They would punch through any shield the Council could generate. Quietl found missiles that could track targets through faster than light jumps. They discovered mines that used quantum entanglement to coordinate with each other, creating network fields that could lock down entire regions of space. Worse, they found artificial intelligence. The Council had banned AI warfare systems 12,000 years ago after the synthetic crisis. Machines that could think and fight faster than biological beings were too dangerous. But humans had not been part of that treaty. They had built thinking machines and put them in control of weapons. Quietl watched the training exercise from extreme distance. Human ships moved in patterns that were chaotic and unpredictable. Their AI systems made decisions in microseconds, faster than any biological pilot could react. They did not fight with honor or ceremony. They fought to win, and winning meant destroying the enemy as quickly and efficiently as possible. The report Quietl sent to the Council was 40,000 pages long. They tried to explain everything they had seen. The colonies on impossible worlds. The military that had been built for total war. The cultural changes that had made isolation not a punishment but a source of pride. Humanity had taken the silence protocol and turned it into a weapon against the Council. Every human child now grew up learning that the galaxy had tried to control Earth and humanity had said no. They learned that humanity stood alone against the stars. They learned that they could not trust anyone but themselves. The Council had tried to teach humanity humility. Instead, they had taught humanity self-reliance. They had tried to show humanity its place. Instead, they had shown humanity that it did not need the Council at all. Quietl included one more observation in their report, the thing that worried them most. Human culture had become unified in a way it never had been before. The old divisions of nation and tribe and religion still existed, but they were secondary now. Every human, whether they lived on Earth or Proxima or any of the 17 colonies, identified first as human. The Silence Protocol had given them a common enemy, a shared struggle, a founding myth that bound them together. The Council had created exactly the kind of species it feared most, united, determined, technologically advancing at an impossible rate, and absolutely convinced that they owed the galaxy nothing. 3 months after Quietl submitted their report, the Council made a decision. High Councilor Wrath sent an official message to humanity. The Silence Protocol would end, but only if humanity agreed to certain restrictions. No more military buildup. No more colonies without Council approval. No more reckless genetic modification. Humanity could join the galactic community, but only if they accepted reasonable limits. The human response came from Ambassador Chen's granddaughter. She had her grandmother's sharp eyes and that same dangerous smile. She traveled to Council space in a ship that should not have been able to breach the quarantine, proving that humanity had been ignoring the silence protocol for years. She stood before the assembled council and spoke 9 words that would change the galaxy forever. You taught us we can only trust ourselves. Thank you. Then she turned and left. The council did not send another message. Instead, they sent a fleet. The council fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 40,000 ships from 80 different species, all united under one command. It took 6 months just to organize them, another 3 months to position them properly. The council wanted humanity to see them coming, wanted them to understand the magnitude of what they faced, wanted them to surrender before the first shot was fired. High Councilor Roth commanded the fleet personally from the flagship Eternal Harmony. It was a ship that had never seen combat because its presence alone had prevented every conflict for the past 1,000 years. 5 kilometers long, shaped like a flowering crystal, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. When it arrived in the system, species understood that resistance was futile. Quietl was aboard, assigned as a cultural advisor. They had argued against the military action. They had warned the Council that humanity would not react the way other species did. But the Council had stopped listening to Quietl. The Council believed that 50,000 human ships, no matter how well armed, could not stand against 40,000 Council ships, backed by 800,000 years of technological superiority. Quietl knew better. They had watched humans for 123 years now. They had seen how humans thought, how they planned, how they fought. Humans did not play by rules that made sense to the Council. Humans did not fight battles they could not win. And if humans had not already surrendered, it meant they thought they could win. The fleet assembled at the edge of human space, a gathering of ships so vast it created gravitational anomalies. Roth sent a message to Earth, to all 17 colonies, to every human station and outpost. The message was simple: submit to Council authority or be pacified by force. Humanity had 72 hours to respond. The response came in 60 seconds. Not from Earth, not from any official government. From a single human named Admiral Sarah Chun, military commander of the United Human Defense Fleet. She was Ambassador Chun's great-granddaughter, and she had the same sharp eyes that ran in that family. The Council's fleet is impressive, she said in the message, but you have made 3 mistakes. First, you assumed we would meet you in open battle. Second, you assumed we would fight honorably. Third, you assumed you would ever reach Earth. The message ended. Wrath dismissed it as bravado. The Council fleet began its advance toward Earth, maintaining perfect formation, 500 ships moving as one, wave after wave of overwhelming force. They expected human ships to meet them at the edge of the system. They expected a glorious battle that would be over in hours. They expected humanity to understand that resistance was impossible. The attack came in the dark between stars. The Council fleet was 3 light years from Earth, traveling in faster-than-light formation when the first wave hit. Thousands of objects dropped out of FTL space directly in the fleet's path. Too small to be ships, too numerous to avoid, moving too fast to stop. Kinetic kill vehicles. Simple chunks of metal accelerated to 97% of light speed. Physics did not care about shields or armor at that velocity. When matter moving that fast hit something, it simply erased it. The first wave destroyed 800 ships in 40 seconds. The fleet's formation broke as captains tried desperately to evade. That was when the second wave hit. More kinetic weapons, But these ones were guided, chasing ships that tried to flee, adjusting their trajectories with small thruster bursts. Wrath ordered the fleet to scatter, to break formation, and make themselves harder to target. That was exactly what the humans wanted. The moment the Council ships separated, the quantum mines activated. Quietl did not fully understand quantum entanglement technology. Humans barely understood it themselves. But they had weaponized it anyway. Thousands of mines, all linked to each other, creating a network that could respond instantly to any ship movement. A Council vessel would try to escape and find itself flying into a minefield that had not been there a second ago. The mines coordinated with each other faster than light itself. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 6 hours. Quietl watched from the eternal harmony as the fleet died. Not all of it, not even most of it, but enough. 24,000 ships destroyed, 16,000 damaged, 40,000 reduced to less than 20,000 combat-capable vessels, and all without ever seeing a human ship. The humans had fought from the shadows. They had used weapons that did not risk their own people. They had turned the emptiness of space itself into a weapon. And they had done it with technology that was crude and inelegant and absolutely devastating. Wrath ordered the retreat. There was no other choice. The fleet pulled back to the rally point, damaged ships limping along, captains reporting casualties in the hundreds of thousands. Species that had not seen war in 10,000 years were learning what it meant to fight a species that had never stopped studying war. Quietl expected the humans to pursue, to finish what they had started. Instead, Admiral Chun sent another message. The Council is welcome to try again, but we suggest a different approach. 3 days later, Ambassador Chun III arrived at the Council homeworld. Not on a military vessel, on a simple diplomatic ship, unarmed, traveling alone except for a single escort. The escort was a warship, but it was not threatening. It simply broadcast on all frequencies as it traveled through Council space. The message was 3 words long, repeated in every Council language. We mean peace. But the ship itself was the real message. It was small, perhaps 1/10 the size of most Council warships. But Quietl sensors analyzed it and found something terrifying. The ship's power output was impossible. Its engine design violated 3 laws of physics that the Council thought were absolute. Its weapons, while not active, showed energy signatures that suggested they could crack a moon in half. The humans had built that ship in less than a century, without Council technology, without Council guidance. They had simply looked at the laws of physics and decided which ones they would obey. Ambassador Chun III addressed the full Council. Every species sent representatives. Every homeworld watched the broadcast. Quietl stood in the chamber, all 4 eyes fixed on this human who looked so small and fragile among the great powers of the galaxy. She began by thanking the Council for the lesson they had taught humanity 50 years ago. The Silence Protocol had shown humans that they could not rely on anyone else. It had forced them to innovate, to adapt, to become strong enough to stand alone. Without that lesson, humanity might have accepted Council guidance, might have become just another member species, following the rules, accepting their place. But that is not who we are, Chun said. Humanity has spent 10,000 years fighting itself. We have created and destroyed 100 civilizations. We have survived plagues and wars and disasters that should have ended us. We have reached the edge of extinction more times than we can count. And every single time, we have done something that no other species seems to understand. We have gotten back up and tried again. She explained the Thunder Doctrine, humanity's new policy toward the galaxy. Humans would not submit to the Council's authority. They would not accept guidance they did not ask for. They would not slow their expansion or limit their technology, or change their nature to fit into the Council's vision of a peaceful galaxy. But humans also did not want war. They did not want to destroy the Council or conquer other species or spread chaos. They simply wanted to exist on their own terms. Any species that wished to engage with humanity as equals would be welcomed. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, all of it was possible. But it would be between equals, not between master and student. And any species that tries to control us, Chun said, her voice carrying that same dangerous edge her great-grandmother had possessed, will discover why humanity spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy things that tried to destroy us. The council chamber fell silent. Quietl watched the reactions. Some species were angry, offended by humanity's arrogance. Some were afraid, having seen what human weapons could do. But some, and this was what worried Quietl most, some were inspired. A delegate from the scattered clans stood up. They were a species that had joined the council 2,000 years ago, accepted their role as junior members, followed every rule. What if we do not wish to be part of the council's hierarchy anymore? They asked. What if we wish to stand with humanity? Another delegate rose. Then another. Within an hour, 17 species had expressed interest in humanity's alternative. Not in leaving the council entirely, but in having a choice. In being treated as equals rather than children who needed guidance. The council had existed for 847,000 years. It had survived the synthetic crisis, the plague wars, the Great Silence. It had brought order to chaos, peace to conflict, civilization to barbarism. But it had never faced a species quite like humanity before. Quietl submitted their final report that night. After 123 years of observation, they finally understood what made humanity different. It was not their technology or their weapons or their willingness to adapt to impossible conditions. It was something simpler and more terrifying. Humanity did not know how to accept limits. Every time someone told them something was impossible, they treated it as a challenge. Every time someone tried to control them, they broke free. Every time they failed, they learned and tried again. They did not have the Council's ancient wisdom or vast technology, but they had something the Council had lost long ago. They had the absolute conviction that they could change anything, survive anything, overcome anything, if they just refused to give up. Quietl report ended with a warning. We tried to teach humanity their place in our galaxy. Instead, we have taught them that they do not need to accept any place they did not choose themselves. The question now is not whether humanity will change the galaxy. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for them. The Council did not collapse overnight. Institutions that had existed for 847,000 years did not simply vanish because one species said no. But something fundamental had changed, and Quietl watched it spread like cracks in ancient stone. The first species to formally withdraw from council hierarchy was the scattered clans. They had been members for 2,000 years, always obedient, always following the rules. 3 months after Ambassador Chen's speech, they sent a delegation to human space. Not to join humanity, not to form an alliance, simply to talk as equals, to trade as partners, to exist outside the system that had defined them for so long. The Council threatened sanctions. The scattered clans ignored them. When the Council realized that enforcement would require military action, and military action against one species would mean revealing weakness to others, they backed down. The cracks grew wider. Within a year, 43 species had opened diplomatic channels with humanity. Within 2 years, 17 had formally declared themselves independent of council hierarchy while remaining nominal members. They called themselves the Free Assembly, and they looked to humanity not as leaders, but as proof that independence was possible. Quietl found themselves in an unusual position. The Council wanted them to continue observing humanity, to find weaknesses, to discover some way to bring humans back under control. But Quietl had spent 130 years watching humans now. They knew there was no weakness to exploit, no pressure point that would make humanity yield. The Council simply did not understand what they were facing. So Quietl did something they had never done before. They requested permission to visit Earth. The Council debated for 3 months before granting approval. Quietl suspected they hoped human contact would corrupt them, make them sympathetic to humanity's chaos. They were probably right. Quietl was tired of watching from orbit. They wanted to understand these strange, stubborn, impossible beings who had torn apart 800,000 years of galactic order in less than a century. The journey to Earth took 2 weeks. Quietl ship was escorted by human vessels, small and quick and covered in weapons. The pilots were friendly, chatting on open channels about Earth weather and what sights Quietl should see. They treated the arrival of a Council observer like tourism rather than a diplomatic incident. Earth orbit was crowded. Quietl counted 300 stations, everything from military installations to commercial ports to scientific research platforms. Ships came and went constantly, not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of other species. The free assembly had made Earth a hub of trade and exchange outside Council control. Quietl landed in a city called Geneva. It was old by human standards, with buildings that were centuries old standing next to structures built last year. Humans did not tear down their history. They built on top of it, around it, incorporating the old into the new in ways that looked chaotic but somehow worked. Ambassador Chen III met Quietl personally. She was older now, gray showing in her hair, but her eyes were still sharp. She greeted Quietl like an old friend rather than an observer from the Council that had tried to destroy humanity. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "I hope you brought comfortable shoes. We have a lot to show you." Quietl spent 3 months on Earth and the 17 colonies. Chen had been right about the shoes. Quietl saw cities that floated in clouds on a world with endless storms. They saw farms on a planet where the sun barely rose, plants growing under artificial lights that mimicked the spectrum of a sun that was too dim to sustain life naturally. They saw children playing in low gravity, adapted humans who could leap 50 meters on worlds where Quietl would be crushed by their own weight. But what struck Quietl most was not the technology or the adaptation. It was the culture. Everywhere they went, humans told stories. Stories about the Silence Protocol. Stories about standing alone against the galaxy. Stories about refusing to accept limits. The stories were not bitter or angry. They were proud. Humans had taken what should have been a punishment and transformed it into the foundation myth of their civilization. In a museum in Beijing, Quietl saw a collection of artifacts from the first contact. The original recordings of Ambassador Chen's refusal. The Council's declaration of the Silence Protocol. Models of the first colony ships that had carried humans to impossible worlds. Children on field trips listened to teachers explain how the galaxy had tried to cage humanity and how humanity had claimed the stars anyway. "Do you teach them to hate the Council?" Quietl asked Chen during one visit. "No," Chen said. "We teach them to never give up. The Council is just part of the story. You tried to control us because you thought you knew better. You were wrong, but we don't hate you for it. We thank you. Thank us for trying to limit you. Thank you for teaching us we were strong enough to say no." Quietl realized something then. Humanity had won not because they were stronger or smarter or more advanced than the Council. They had won because they had turned every obstacle into an advantage. The Silence Protocol became motivation. Military pressure became proof they needed to be self-reliant. The vast age and power of the Council became evidence that age and power were not everything. humans did not fight the way the Council expected. They did not follow rules that limited them. They simply kept moving forward, adapting to whatever came, refusing to accept that anything was impossible. And now other species were learning from them. Quietl attended a meeting of the Free Assembly on Mars. 63 species now, all of them trading freely, sharing technology without Council approval, forming alliances based on mutual interest rather than hierarchy. The Assembly had no leader, no central authority. It was chaos by Council standards. But it worked because every species was there by choice, not obligation. A delegate from the Harmonious Collective stood to speak. Quietl own species, one of the oldest council members, one of the most devoted to maintaining order. The delegate proposed that the Harmonious Collective open formal diplomatic relations with the Free Assembly while maintaining council membership. "We do not wish to leave the council," the delegate said, "but we wish to have a choice in how we interact with the galaxy. The council brought us peace, but peace built on compulsion is not true peace. Humanity has shown us another way." Quietl felt something shift inside them. Their entire life had been spent serving the council, believing in the necessity of order, trusting that guidance was better than freedom. But watching their own species choose to step outside that order, Quietl understood that the galaxy had changed in ways that could never be reversed. After 3 months, Quietl returned to council space. They filed their report, 40,000 pages of observations, analysis, and conclusions. The summary was simple. The Council could not defeat humanity through military force, could not isolate them through sanctions, could not convince them to accept hierarchy. The only choice was to adapt or become irrelevant. High Council of Wrath read the report in silence. Then they asked Quietl a question. "What do you think will happen to the Council?" Quietl considered their answer carefully. "The Council will survive," they said, "but it will not rule. Species will choose to remain members because they value the stability and resources the Council provides, not because they fear punishment or need guidance. The Council will become one power among many in the galaxy, not the only power. And that, I believe, is how it should have always been." "You sound like a human," Wrath said. "Perhaps I have spent too much time observing them," Quietl replied. "Or perhaps they have been right all along." 20 years later, the galaxy had stabilized into a new pattern. The Council still existed, smaller but more flexible. 312 species remained members, loyal to the old ways. The Free Assembly had grown to 97 species, all trading and cooperating without central authority. Some species maintained membership in both, trying to balance tradition with change. Humanity continued to expand. 37 colonies now, scattered across nearby space. They had not slowed down. They had not become less reckless. But they had proven that their way worked, at least for them. Other species studied human methods, adapted what made sense for them, discarded what did not. The galaxy was messier than it had been, less orderly, but also more dynamic, more innovative, more alive. Quietl retired from council service and accepted a position as cultural liaison to the Free Assembly. They lived on one of humanity's colonies, a world with heavy gravity where humans had adapted to be short and strong. Quietl liked the humans there. They were friendly, curious, always asking questions about Quietl long life and what the galaxy had been like before humans arrived. One day, a young human asked Quietl what humanity's greatest achievement was. Quietl thought about everything they had seen. The impossible colonies, the devastating weapons, the political revolution that had reshaped galactic civilization. "Your greatest achievement," Quietl said, "is that you convinced the galaxy that no one gets to tell you who you are supposed to be. You did not defeat the Council with weapons. You defeated us with an idea. The idea that every species, every individual, has the right to choose their own path. That is your real revolution." The young human smiled. "My grandmother says you taught us that. She says the council tried to control us, and that taught us why we needed to be free." "Perhaps we taught each other," Quietl said. At night, Quietl would stand outside and look up at the stars. They were dimmer on this heavy gravity world, filtered through a thick atmosphere, but they were still there. Somewhere out there, the council still debated, still tried to maintain order, still believed in the old ways. But the galaxy had moved on. Humanity had not gone quietly into the order the council built. They had answered with thunder, and the sound still echoed across the stars. And in that thunder, Quietl heard something the council had forgotten long ago. The sound of a species that refused to accept limits, refused to stop growing, refused to believe that anything was impossible. The sound of a species that would always get back up and try again. And in the end, Quietl thought, perhaps that was exactly what the galaxy needed.